My secret sauce is if you get a technical person that knows how to sell, I think that's a pretty tough one to top because if you can actually show that you've done the work and put in the hours, but you know how to resonate that message with the customer, I think that is the winning formula and the unicorn, so to speak.
Hi, welcome to I Hope This Email Finds You Well, a business development podcast for professional service firms. My name is Neil Barrow. I'm your host. I'm the founder of Enabled BD, a business development consulting firm, and Underground BD, a business development professional community. I'm joined today by Ravi Kumar. He is the guy that founders and CFOs call when they're about to do a transaction that can make or break the company, like take the company public. He's a partner at the Connor Group, an advisory firm that has worked on hundreds of IPOs and big deals. When he's off the clock, he's in Hillsborough, North Carolina, with his wife, 4 kids, and a yellow lab named Valor, usually either on a golf course or recording his own podcast, Breakthrough Work. I love interviewing other podcast hosts because it goes pretty well. So I'm going to enjoy this. Thanks for joining, Ravi.
Of course, Neil. Love the cross promotion, man. Good to be on.
Let's go. So we're going to roll right into the combo meal, give people what they want. These are your 3 BD takes, 3 and 5 minutes, 3 for 5. So let's start with the first one. You gave me the accounting engineer. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I would say, and I've gone on record saying this not only to our own business development team, but on the podcast, which is the secret to a long-term relationship, if we're focused on the client, is both the combination of credibility and likability. One without the other doesn't really create that long-term relationship. And so if we analogize to software sales, you have the sales engineer, which is a super user of the software tool that they're trying to sell, but they also have a commercial sense that they can convey how someone in their customer shoes would actually leverage the software and benefit from the offering. And so from my perspective, having been in the delivery role for 20 plus years, I know the depths and the in the trenches knowledge of actually delivering on IPOs, M&A, SPAC transaction, large scale accounting standards implementation projects, such that I can get into a level of technical granularity with the controllers, CFOs, but then also dial it back to then understand board member knowledge and CEOs understanding what this would mean on their balance sheets and other things. So knowing enough to be dangerous in terms of the technical nature, but then understanding your audience and how they're actually going to be leveraging your support is super critical. And sometimes you have the technical accountants that don't know how to sell, and you have the BD folks that don't have the technical expertise. I like to bring both to the table, which has, I guess, made me successful in both sides of the business.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love your analogy to the sales engineer, right? Having the accounting engineer. I think that's exactly right. Is like, I talk about it a lot, thinking that whenever we're, the technical folks need to have a point of view, right? A global kind of back client empathetic viewpoint of where the client's coming from, right? So they have to have a point of view that kind of coincides with their technical knowledge. And the BD pro, they need to have a technical view, right?
Yeah.
And so I'll ask you a hard question up front. Who makes the best salespeople or BD people? Who makes the best BD people at firms? Is it the BD people that learns the technical, or is it the technical that learns the BD skills?
Well, my secret sauce is if you get a technical person that knows how to sell, I think that's a pretty tough one to top because if you can actually show that you've done the work and put in the hours, but you know how to resonate that message with the customer, I think that is the winning formula and the unicorn, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think both can be successful, and it's an age-old battle question. So I love that. So moving on to your second menu item, your secret weapon is a partner who can sell. You just said it, right? So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So part of it, you asked the question of in professional services, is it a top of the funnel problem or is it a closing deals problem? And you can have as many, now AI lead gen tools or referral channels and other things. The top of the funnel is the top of the funnel. what really seals the deal is the partners that are ultimately going to do the work. They're the ones that, can a BD executive can bring into the room and they can say, yes, I've worked on 5 IPOs in your industry with these executives. These were the outcomes. Here were the challenges that we face. Here's my approach and how I would address, this project. Here's what my team looks like. Here's what we think that the estimated cost will be, where we expect surprises, where, we have a great handle on things and how we respond to unexpected bumps in the road that we run into. And I think having those partners that come in, provide a bio or a relevant introduction that talks specifically to that project, to that industry, that is going to resonate with that executive or client sponsor is really the one that helps close the deal. Because otherwise you can have as many lead gen meetings as you want. If you don't have that partner that is ultimately the one that says the buck stops here with me for the quality of the work to stay within budget, you're going to fall short.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think both are challenges at firms, is getting new opportunities and at bats, and then are we closing the at bats that we're getting, right? And that's complicated, but ultimately those are the two buckets, and that's, I think, the main difference between how I describe sales and business development, right? Sales are the people and the skill sets to generate the conversation that's going to close the opportunity and move the opportunity forward. Business development is getting into the room and then quarterbacking and communicating that opportunity. But I say this a lot, is business development oftentimes is not in charge of whether that client makes a decision to go with them or not. It's our team, because that's who they're hiring. So I love how you describe that, which is ultimately we've got to build trust quickly. And that's what you're describing, right?
Yeah. And taking that one step further, I think I love your analogy between the difference between sales and business development. And I take that one step further and also add in the customer success angle, right?
Sure.
Because you can have an initial project that maybe it's a technical accounting memo, maybe it's a small audit prep engagement if we're sticking to the accounting scenarios. And if you don't have that partner and that engagement team deliver at a high level and earn that trust, build that rapport with that client, maybe that initial $20,000 engagement, has the opportunity to turn into a system implementation, finance transformation project, and it turns into a multi-million-dollar, multi-year, long-term relationship. Now, if we just deliver and view it transactionally, and we're just, hey, we're going to excel at this one engagement, but don't have the big vision in mind, that's where I think you're maybe leaving some opportunities on the table and probably not getting the most out of that relationship.
Yes, I agree. I think that's if we can talk about that vision up front and how we're a true partner to our clients, then the cross-selling, that terminology that's a bad word now, that goes away because we're a partner to their vision, right? And I like how you describe that. Okay, last menu item. The firms that win know how to collaborate.
Yeah. So I think when you get into, once again, using the software sales analogy, you've got a lot of professional services firms that are implementing or have already implemented a commission-based origination reward system or incentive program, right? I think when I look at winning in the marketplace, winning is making sure that you're giving yourself the best opportunity to win. You're putting the best team together. You're finding a team that will resonate with that client, that has the requisite experience, that can perform at a high level, has done that work before. It's not necessarily, oh, was it my relationship? Was it your relationship? And, then there's infighting for months on end after the deal, or possibly even shooting yourself in the foot before you have that initial conversation of, well, BD, why did you reach out to my client without letting me know first, or letting me know that you were going to be sending an email? Well, I've tended to fall into the ask for forgiveness camp. Occasionally there's some feathers that are ruffled, but at the same time, if you're not reaching out to your clients or your contacts, you better be sure that other service firms are going to be reaching out to them on on their own behalf. And so I would rather over communicate and make sure that you're staying top of mind with clients and taking a client centric model than focusing on internally who's getting credit, how do the commission splits work? Because frankly, if that's the focus and it's introspectively focused, you've already lost.
Yeah, I've got no notes on that. I think that we unintentionally create games to play, right? As we're thinking about, especially in the incentive commissionable like bonus structure that we come up with. I think historically we've looked to, and you've used this, and I want to kind of dig into it, but you've used kind of SaaS analogies, right? With how we think about sales and professional services. But I think ultimately we think that if we create incentives on originating new business, that's going to incentivize our people. And I think what we're finding is that that's not the case. I think that it creates more barriers than it does rewards for motivating people to get out there and drive new business. So I love the collaboration component and being client-centric. Does this program, does this initiative, does this serve our clients ultimately?
Yeah. No, and I think the firms that are the best at this think about, okay, how are we putting our best foot forward for the client? And if we win and we grow the overall pie, everybody eats, everybody wins. When we switch the paradigm to how do we ensure that we maximize our own individual slices, I feel like that gets into the way of the bigger picture, and let's call it the rising tide lifts all boats analogy. I always say let's make a bigger pie instead of maximizing our slice, right?
Yeah. No, I love that viewpoint, and I think that's the right one that we take. But it's how do you actually develop those programs, which is actually the challenge. And so let's talk more about that. But let's dive into kind of your background. So tell me a little bit about where you got started and what you were learning about business development early in your career.
Yeah, so I started my career in public accounting, 8 years at KPMG in Southern California, 3 years at EY in New Zealand, and have been at Connor Group for about 12 years. Early on in my career, I didn't really think about business development. I didn't think about sales. I thought about, how do I build relationships with my teams? How do I build relationships with my clients? And how am I expanding this network? Because I don't know if it was an innate sense. I've always been very relationship focused. I've always been very good at the technical, but I've been on record saying that I've never been passionate about technical accounting. But it's been essentially the Trojan horse for me to do what I am passionate about, which is building relationships and long-term relationships. And so what I was focused on was building a network, understanding, maybe not at the time and as a senior associate or a manager at KPMG, but okay, my team members on the audit side or on the advisory side are going to become corporate controllers or CFOs somewhere else. Or the law firm that I work with, they're going to work on multiple other transactions. If I do a good job on this transaction, they're going to remember that. And, they'll remember, oh, they made our jobs easier by handling the accounting and the registration statement and the complex technical accounting parts of the transaction that we were all working on across the table from one another. And that's what folks remember. They remember the quality. They remember the likability aspect. You're spending a lot of time with these folks, clients, team members, ecosystem service providers. So if they look back on it and it's an enjoyable experience, guess what? That's business development, that's sales. And so when I joined Connor Group, I made partner after 2.5 years, very quickly developed a large book of business and found that I was bringing in the majority of my book of business that I was managing through my network. It was repeat CFOs, it was ecosystem providers that I'd built strong relationships with. I had sent business to, and they were effectively reciprocating. I've always said, I'd rather be the first to send a referral to one of a partner that I want to work with, as opposed to ask for something in return. And if you create enough goodwill in, the universe, you're going to end up getting a lot of inbound from those folks that you've helped along the way without that expectation that they were going to provide something in return. It's almost like a subconscious, oh, yeah, I remember they've sent me like 3 deals and I should probably find a way to repay the favor so that we can continue receiving that deal flow. And so I've just, I think, naturally fallen into business development, not because I was thinking of it as sales. Like when someone says, oh, you're a sales guy, I still cringe a little bit. Maybe it's a psychological block for me. I just think I've done, great work. I've built great relationships, and that has been almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that's led me into business development and sales.
Yeah, and I think you highlight the journey that a lot of people take,
Yeah.
or can take. I think a lot of people just get stuck at the doing good work, right?
Right.
And what you added on there was, I'm doing good work to build great relationships, and you're taking it a next step. And so I find the most successful business developers are the ones that on the delivery side, when you're a practitioner, right, and you're working with clients on delivery, I find the best ones have found a way to integrate business development into their daily work, right?
Absolutely.
Their internal conversations, their external conversations, their conversations with clients. And so they're integrating these questions, but it didn't necessarily, it might have started naturally, right, for you because you're curious, and also you're maybe a little bit more, you have an aptitude towards developing relationships.
Yeah.
But some people can never get to that next point on doing really good work, but then expanding or delivering or developing those relationships. So how do you think about someone who does really great work but they haven't necessarily made that move towards the developing and deepening of the relationship? How do you think about maybe integrating some of those thoughts around the relationship after you do good work?
Yeah. And I would say, one, at some professional services firm, they put everyone into a box, right? Say, spend 70% of your time doing client delivery, 20% of your time doing business development, 10% of your time doing admin. The reality is, I don't think that everybody is in a one size fits all box. Some folks like myself should probably have a model that sways more towards business development, less towards delivery when I was still doing delivery and I got to that stage. So I would say understanding the different dynamics, understanding individual strengths, and knowing which levers to pull from where they can still get the same successful results. So let's take a couple of different scenarios. One, you have a social, more business development inclined professional that also does, high quality work. Well, in that case, maybe you're, scheduling a happy hour. Maybe you're bringing some folks together for a nice curated dinner, and you're creating a memorable experience that allows you to not only connect on a professional level and talk about what's going on at the company, or talk about recent things that we're seeing with some of our other clients, but also connect on a personal level, understanding, the ages of their kids, what their kids are up to, what their families are doing, what their hobbies are. And if you take interest in your clients, and more often than not, the clients that you're going to like working with are ones that have shared interests, maybe you take them golfing, maybe you take them to a sporting match, maybe you take them to a nice dinner because you guys like the same type of cuisine, and you find those common threads. Before you know it, that rapport that you've built on the personal level will translate into a positive business, client relationship. Now, on the other folks that maybe feel, oh, I can't do sales, I can't do business development, it's a very tactical business development approach, which is, okay, you've finished a project. Maybe even before that project is over, you start thinking, hey, what else is on the roadmap? Like, what else can we help you with? What are the things keeping you up at night? And finding ways to maybe bring in other service lines. You talked about cross-selling earlier, bringing in other, members of the firm that have subject matter expertise in other areas that those folks might need. But had you not asked the question, you never would have known. Right? Or just checking in after a transaction closes, just saying, hey, it's been a month or whatever it is. Just wanted to check in, see how things are going. Keeping the conversation going is also business development and staying top of mind. There's several ways of doing that. Face to face, I think, and in real life, as we're seeing making a surging comeback post COVID, is having a lot of positive effects on generating business and building some of those relationships. And so I don't think it has to be over engineered, or you don't have to make someone do something that is outside of their strengths. It might be a little outside their comfort zone, which is okay. I often say, everyone should be comfortable being uncomfortable, but find what works within, your skill set. And there are several ways to do business development based on those skill sets.
Yeah, no, I agree. And thank you for those examples, because I think you highlight that business development is personal to the
Mm-hmm.
person, right? And we need to find the least friction on ramps to generating and executing effective conversations with people and developing those relationships. But, reflecting back in your time in delivery, um, we hear a lot about capacity and
Mm-hmm.
time. I
Yeah.
don't have time to do it. I don't. I've got a lot of work to do. I'm at capacity. So we all have the same amount of time, right? So how did you even think about time management, or was it just part of how you operated? Or like, what were you thinking about? Like, what do you tell people like that are on your team, right? Like, how do you help them understand that it's not necessarily a capacity constraint, but it's more about how you're having and utilizing the conversations and the meetings and the work that you're already doing to do business development. How are you thinking about that on that front?
Yeah, and most of my time in delivery, actually, in fact, all of my time in delivery was before the advent of all these AI tools that you can now use to prospect and draft emails. And I'm not going out and endorsing that everyone send AI generated emails,
Please don't.
but
Yes.
there are so many efficiency tools that you have at your disposal now to allow you to do more with less. And whether that's time, whether that's effort, whether that's research. Now, you still have to make sure that it's coming across as authentic, it's coming across as genuine, it's coming across as accurate, because we all know that AI tools can hallucinate. But I played a lot of sports growing up in high school and college, and there's always folks that are quick to come up with excuses of why they can't do something, and I would quickly turn that around on, well, what would you need to do differently in order to execute on this? So I think it then very quickly becomes a question of prioritization. And also just taking pride as a delivery partner. The last thing I wanted was to not be busy. And so if I was wrapping up a project, I don't think I ever had a period where I was just like, oh gosh, what am I going to do today? I don't think I've had a day like that in my career. Maybe that's just how I'm wired. But already when I'm looking at my book of business, I'm looking at the pipeline, I'm thinking about, okay, how many more projects can I take on? Who should I be reaching out to? And I've been fortunate that once I started building the engine almost started delivering on its own, to where like there's more inbound, and then it's just a question of scale. So as I got later into my delivery years, where I was still doing a lot of business development, then I had to ask the question of, how is this model scalable? What is the optimal book of business that I can truly manage while still spending as much time as I am doing on business development? And the more you align your individual goals with firm goals, the more it ends up being a win-win formula. And so how do you then pivot that to say, okay, for me, I was very successful on the business development side. I was also successful on the technical side, but we've got these great technical partners that can do what I would do on the technical side. But maybe not everyone that had those technical accounting chops could do what I could do on the business development side. So as I started prioritizing more on the business development side of the house, I was able to bring in business and load up everyone else's plates, such that as a firm, we started humming at a more scalable model.
Yeah, and I think you brought up some great points around efficiency, and there's tools to help you, but ultimately you said it, which it's like, is this a priority or not for
Yeah.
you? And I think I think we there's a skill set that's developed over time or not around business development and understanding how do we execute that effectively. And I think again, people with a more natural aptitude to go develop new relationships and see growth as a path to promotion, to
Yeah.
taking on more responsibilities around what they want to be doing. That's where you start to see those people start separating themselves, right? I think business development is everybody's job. Everybody participates in BD, but ultimately how everybody participates is a little bit different. And it's like, how do you get people up the ladder, like slowly, right, to build those
Yeah.
skills, right? Because everybody's journey is a little bit different. So whenever you're talking about, making that transition from delivery to like ultimately BD, what did your work look like differently? How did you think about approaching that in a more, okay, now I'm doing this only? Like how did you think about approaching that in a different way?
Yeah, the first thing I would say was the hardest transition was going from doing the work to having relationships with clients that I've previously been the one responsible for the delivery, and then telling them, oh, but by the way, like this is your engagement team, this is your engagement partner. It's no longer me. And so conveying the same level of confidence, conveying the same level of credibility, but not ultimately doing the actual delivery. I think that was a hard transition for me. And yeah, go
Well,
ahead.
I was gonna ask how did you make that transition? Because a lot of firms know that they need to move clients off of some of their partners' books
Yeah.
down to senior managers or principals or whoever. How do you think about, like, what did you learn during that time of that transition of clients?
Yeah, I would say it's an art, not a science, and it was absolutely trial and error. Sometimes I would try something. I was like, "Oh," and they're like, "And you're the partner, right, Robbie?" And I was like, "No, actually, it's this partner." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, that's not going to work." And I'm like, "Okay, no, don't use that
Don't do
approach. Like,
that
find a
again,
way
right?
to communicate that my
Right.
involvement will be ongoing on the engagement. I was going to be lockstep with the team, that I was still, ready and able to take calls and, support the company. And I am an extension of, both the team and of management, such that, their success is our success and vice versa. So ultimately the talk track evolved to where they didn't feel like, for me it was just like cool sales and then someone else is then doing the delivery. It was truly, okay, I see that Robbie's committed to the long-term relationship. If I have an issue or whatever, I can call him. But, this is my engagement partner for this project. And that's who I'm going to be dealing with. And that's who I'm in the trenches with. But I do have the support that I need. So that's the first, it was not, I wish I could say it was a, flip of the switch. And like all of a sudden I was like, hey, cool, I'm not your partner anymore. It's this partner. And it all went smoothly. No, there's absolutely bumps in the road. But I would say as that transition happened, and as I started to delegate more of my existing client responsibilities to some of the other partners, and I started onboarding new clients directly with other partners, it ended up being more of a natural transition where that question stopped happening, because my previous clients knew that I wasn't on the delivery side anymore. The new clients knew that they were positioned with a partner that had the requisite subject matter expertise, that gave a great introduction, that showed, why they were the best partner for the project. And it became less focus of, why isn't Robbie my partner on this project? So I think it's an evolution, and that is probably one of the biggest challenges for delivery partners and professionals that go into business development, that have built these long-term relationships across multiple clients and companies with some of these contacts, that then ultimately have to say, now X, Y, and Z is now your go-to person for this, for this project.
Yeah, and I think that's very reflective of what a BD looks like at firms, right?
Yeah.
Is the how I would always position myself with, or how I learned to position myself with new potential clients is, again, I was BD and they knew that I was BD going into it, right? And I would help quarterback the opportunity with the point of view and the deal team and the whole bit, right? And then my role in there is I would want to make sure to set expectations where it's like, hey, if anything were to happen or you're not satisfied or you need more help or things are going on, you call me, right? I'm always going to be around. Like you can call them too. But if you want to call me, like that's what I'm here for, is to make sure that we're successful together as partners on this project.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And what levers can I pull internally,
Yes.
right? Bringing the right team, bringing the right, skill set on costs. What other financial incentives can we, and, I've been very creative depending on stage, sector, budget constraints, whatever. My main question to clients is just, what are you working with and how can I help you? And how can we make sure that we're fitting within, the parameters that you have to play with?
Yeah. And so I'm also interested in that transition, and it's the same line of
Yeah.
thinking, which is now you went from selling yourself and your
Yeah.
expertise to now selling the capabilities of the firm. And so how did
Correct.
your role, like maybe your mindset change going into some of those new opportunities as you were starting in just pure BD?
Yeah, I've always been curious if there were things that I didn't know, if there were offerings that our firm offered that I wasn't specifically delivering. I wanted to learn more about it. I'd have conversations with those solution leaders within the firm. So even when I was on the delivery side, I was still curious. And frankly, I was still selling those other solutions and knowing those key buzzwords of like, okay, oh, you mentioned that you have procurement issues. Well, do you need a procurement tool? Like, that's just an example, but understanding where I could ask more provocative questions such that it then yielded a follow up conversation where I could bring in a subject matter expert. So I'd like to say, I say this a lot of times when I, had a bunch of coachees and they were trying to get promoted, said, well, the best way of getting promoted is to effectively already do the job that you're, at the role and level that you're looking to get. It ends up being more of a coronation than actually, a promotion because you're already effectively doing the job. So I wanted to already be doing the job before I became full-time BD so that I can say, hey, this is why this is effectively a non-issue because frankly, I've already been doing the work for the last, several years. And this is why I'm confident I will be successful in this. Not everyone gets that opportunity to, have the flexibility. That's where it kind of comes back to that ask for forgiveness versus ask for permission, and knowing the dynamics of the firms or the organizations that you're working for, where you understand where you have autonomy, where you do need to absolutely ask for permission, and understanding the lanes that you effectively can swim in.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a main point, which is you were going. What you're describing is you, which is you're going out and you're curious and you're learning about these
Yeah.
service lines and you're going to have these conversations and you're going to make these things happen, right? But at a firm, we know that
Yeah.
that's not proper expectations for all of our people. And so
Agreed.
how do you think about enabling all of this activity and information gathering and getting our people up to speed if they're not going to take the initiative that you're describing? Like it's a part culture, part structure, but like how do y'all think about that, or how do you think about that how do you scale a you, right? Like, okay, well, I'm not going to get everybody to go all talk and learn about
Yeah.
exactly the ideal clients and what problems we solve on all of our services that we provide in all of our industries. So how do we impact that as a firm?
I almost feel like I'm talking to my CEO because I got asked that exact question of how do I make another Ravi, right? And I get that same question at home as well with four kids. Like, how do I clone myself 5 times over so I can make everyone happy? I think that what I've learned is it is easy to train someone in business development. It's difficult to be successful at it. And so what I mean when I say that is in order to create another me, I feel like you'd have to build someone that has 20 years of experience, has the ability to build long-term relationships, and has the ability to connect the dots, right? So I don't know if finding another me is possible, at least in, I think my firm's tried, and we have a few successful folks that, we team up together. And as a team, we are, close to unstoppable. But I also know that the reason why I have gone to the firms that I've worked at and I've been successful at it is because it is not common to find someone that is both strong technically and then strong relationship wise and understands how to sell. So that triple threat is hard to train. Now, what you can do is make that model scalable by creating a support system of having business development directors and resources to then help facilitate and expedite. Because I'd be the first to say, am I the fastest at responding to emails? I think my teams and others would probably say, no, you could do better. And I would be the first to admit it. But if there's one thing I know, I can be super productive in a 3-5 minute phone call in scoping, understanding needs, understanding what the ideal mix is, also knowing enough about my firm, knowing this partner and this director are going to be the best fit for this project. Oh, it's in this region. We have to think about time zones. They want on-site or they want a mix of remote and on-site. So there's a lot of thought process and synthesis that goes on in my head, but having a team and lieutenants that I can call upon to say, okay, cool, I've had this conversation with the CFO. Here's like my list of all the notes from the meeting and everything. Go generate an SOW, go generate a proposal, schedule a follow-up call and send a PBC list so we can get what we need from the client to properly scope and determine what the fee estimates are going to be. So I think providing those technical relationship focused leaders with the infrastructure that enables someone like me to be external facing and have a microphone and be a brand ambassador for the firm is super critical.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that it starts. I think firms jump to origination when they need the enablement side.
Yeah.
Like, can we 2x Ravi, right? With some folks and technology, right? With some support. And so I love that because I think that's what firms are trying to solve for. But I think when you're looking at your path, what is your week? I know it's different, but what is a successful week for Ravi look like? Like, what does that look like now? Because obviously that's different when you were delivery and BD, right? Yeah. But so what does a good week look like for Ravi? Because what I find is for business development pros, like we get stretched pretty thin. And then we run super fast and we're stretched pretty thin. We've always got ideas. We're always pursuing new things. And then at some point we kind of do this kind of ebb and flow where we get stretched and then we got to come back and focus. And then it's just this ever ongoing struggle.
Contracting balloon. Yeah.
You're always doing that, right? So I'd be curious to see what a good week looks like for Ravi.
Yeah. Well, if my admin was answering that question, she'd say a week where I'm not rescheduling 35 calls in a week because I'm double and triple booked. Part of the reason why my email responsiveness is challenging is because a good day for me is I'm in meetings, whether it's Zoom from 8:30 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. If I'm lucky, I can scarf down something in between a call or, find a moment to actually action all of the things that have come out of those calls. That's where, once again, the lieutenants who said, cool, I have all the notes from the call. I'm going to run with this. I'll let you know if I have any questions. That's super helpful for me. But I would say, where I'm able to have impactful conversations with clients that lead to either new opportunities, proposals, or closed deals, opportunities where I can be a brand ambassador for the firm, whether that's hosting IPO summits, CFO roundtables, airing my podcast episodes, promoting our thought leadership online and through our social media platforms. where I am extremely visible with as many clients and prospective clients and the ecosystem as possible is, I think, a good week for me and a good week for the firm.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that uh, the inputs towards the outputs, like okay, we're trying to get
Yeah.
these outputs, and so I've got to be hyper focused on all my inputs, right? And
Yeah.
we'll catch all the stuff as it falls out, right? But we've got to be hyper focused on our inputs, and I
Yeah.
think you're talking about something that I think people eventually unlock, or it's rare, but I think it's the advanced move, which is once you have relationships, once you have an ecosystem and people in your orbit, then it's about curating shared experiences with those people, right?
Yeah.
And so could you share with me about how you think about that? Because you've mentioned some of them, but tell me a little bit about
Yeah.
how you think about that.
So part of it too, so in those days where I'm on nonstop Zoom, a lot of times it's with finance executives or other folks, other CEOs, board members that I've worked with in the past, or that I have close working relationships with, and maybe they're looking for their next board seat, maybe they're looking for their next CFO role. And so part of it is also understanding now, how can I leverage my network to then, help them find their next role and be, value add and accretive to what they're looking for. And so sometimes, that's kind of like an unofficial recruiter role, but, I'm basically helping them on their journey without asking for anything in return. Now, a lot of those CFOs that I've helped introduce to their, current or previous roles have then said, hey, as soon as I get, my, the lay of the land and I get my feet underneath me, I'll be in touch and let you know what our needs are. And that's never an ask for me. That's kind of what they reach out to me for. So I think cultivating those relationships where you're, providing value to others in your ecosystem without asking for anything in return, not just on the ecosystem side, but the clients and prospective clients that you've worked with in the past. That's absolutely critical. Occasionally, it's we sponsor ACG events, which is a big private equity network, and understanding every time I'm across from someone, I understand, okay, what makes you tick? How do you make your money? What makes you successful? And I try and frame those things. So if it's a curated dinner and it's a private equity sponsor, how do I put you in a room with other, peers that can do co-invest, or investment bankers that can bring you deal flow, or family offices that can be an LP in your fund? That's, one example. If it's a CFO event, how do I find a CFO that is either extremely successful, just completed a huge transaction, works for a really exciting company that an audience of CFOs would love to hear from because they have the same questions? The podcast has been great for that, because I've talked to CFOs around launching, new products that have scaled them into the multiple billions of revenue. I've talked to folks that have done hackathons where they've created AI agents, and folks have reached out to me asking me to connect them with that CFO afterwards because they want to roll that out for their organizations. And so giving folks the content and the experiences that they want to, hear and feel and live through it's kind of, sometimes doesn't feel like work, just it's fun.
Yeah, it is. And I think that builds relationships, it builds trust, it builds your brand. It does all of those things together when you can bring people together, right? And that's what ultimately what you're talking about. And I love that. And so, Ravi, let's talk about like the next 6, 9, 12 months for you. What are you working on? What are you working towards? What are some exciting things that you're tackling, or the firm is tackling, around business development?
Yeah, so I would say, obviously, today we're celebrating the largest IPO in U.S. history, and the SpaceX IPO. As a firm that has taken 265 companies public, we're thinking about the next wave, right? Obviously, you've got the high profile companies like OpenAI and Anthropic that are looking at going public. So it's staying top of mind with that next wave of companies that are looking to prepare to go public, 12, 18 months prior to that liquidity event. And how do we get in front of those clients? From my perspective, I want to be building relationships, frankly, with those companies, anywhere from 2 to 3 years before they're even thinking about an IPO. Because what we're seeing a lot is those relationships are built earlier than some of these companies expect. And those relationships end up becoming pretty sticky as long as you're likable, as long as you keep doing a good job. You're not giving your client any reason to find a new business or find a new service provider. So I would say, as a business development organization, as a firm, we are looking to support our existing clients. We're bringing in new clients. We're hearing a lot in the world of AI and automation, and we've been at the forefront of helping companies adopt generative AI in their finance and accounting teams, and also looking at just data workflows and orchestration and warehousing and ensuring that companies are getting the data and seeing the data that they need to properly assess the performance of their business and then report out to their key stakeholders and board members. So I think for us, it's just throwing more fuel on the fire, so to speak, and continuing to grow and hopefully building on the momentum we're seeing in the capital markets at the moment.
No, that's awesome. And I think again, the space that y'all are playing in, I think that's really critical viewpoint for y'all to capitalize on that momentum, which is what you're describing. And I love that, man. Well, Ravi, it's great to have you on. Do you have any final thoughts for us as we're thinking about business development, growing your network, hiring BD people, leave us with a final thought for us.
Yeah, I look, we're in an interesting world in professional services right now where there's private equity dollars flowing almost freely. There's lots of consolidation happening, and everybody wants to build the largest firm, grow revenue, have the best clients. And what it's going to come down to is who really has those relationships, who is able to add value. I mean, everybody to some extent should be able to do a good job on these projects, but it's going to come down to who has built that trust with those client sponsors. Who are they going back to time and time again to get that repeatable, successful result? And so really focusing on not the transactional, not the one-off project base, but focusing on that long-term relationship build. It's not a new relationship you're trying to sell and close for tomorrow. You're trying to close a relationship for 2-3 years down the road. And so I'd say taking that long-term focus, taking the relationship, putting it on a personal level, as you pointed out, and really building the infrastructure that empowers a business development team to be successful, not worrying about who's hoarding relationships and, why are you calling my client? How can we focus on collaboration and win as a team as opposed to trying to maximize our own individual slices?
No, I love that. And we need to enable our people to play as a team and collaborate well. And so let's go win together. I love that message. And Ravi, thank you so much for joining. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, Neil. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And thank you all for listening and watching. And we'll catch you next time on I Hope This Email Finds You Well.